So today we're going to be looking at a game from 1986 called Beyond the Titanic. It's a text adventure which has largely been forgotten, but it sits within a lineage that really can't be understated. So we'll start with a little bit of history. There was a NASA engineer by the name of Boyd Miller who'd been working on the Gemini and Apollo programs. In the 1970s he moved to Australia, and his son Scott started getting into computers. Possibly through his father, but through local schools and other institutions, he got to play with the Wang 2200 mini computer, where he learned BASIC and a bunch of other things and started writing games. Later the family moved back to America, where he made friends with a chap called George Broussard, and according to Scott's plan file of a few years later, the two of them just basically started buying computers left, right and centre. And they also spent quite a lot of time in arcades. Now, according to some, Scott was pretty much just in a holding pattern circling trying to find his thing. But Scott and George actually wrote their own book, had lots of articles in newsletters, and wrote quite a few games. Now, apparently, according to some of the Wikipedia and Giant Bomb links, Scott started working on Apple II computers, where he sold some of his games to a company called DataMost, set up by David Gordon in 1981, who would actually go on to have quite an illustrious career himself in other larger organisations. In 1982, apparently, Scott sold a game called Spectre, which, if you were paying attention yesterday, was the forerunner, or I'd say inspiration, to 3Demon, considered to be the great-great-great-grandfather of many modern FPS games, which could possibly mean that Scott was the author of the great-great-great-great-grandfather of FPS games. And apparently he also wrote a game called Pandora's Box in the same year, selling it to DataMost. But this is all a giant question mark, because there's no mention of this in any other documentation, including the Shareware Heroes book by Richard Moss. The only link appears to be on a couple of websites which on Scott Miller's page, author page, have a link to these games. So the question I have really is this the same Scott Miller, or has the site or the people constructing the sites basically just conflated two people with the same name? What is, however, known is that in the early to mid-1980s, Miller was learning to program on the IBM PC, and he ended up producing a few games which he sold to a company called Key Punch Software. Key Punch was a small-time publisher. They have a few games which are still quite well regarded, but for the most part they removed the names of the developers who contributed to their software, but they didn't in this case. They left Miller's name in. He sold Diamond Digger, a game called Rogue Runner, which also goes by the name of Maze Runner, Maze Machine, a game program for writing mazes using a random seed which you could then print out and solve yourself on paper, and Block 5, a sort of a Go-like game. Key Punch put those four games together and sold it as a pack in Maze Adventures, but you'll notice that they misspelled Rogue. Spell checking's important, people. In 1986. Now, in 1986, whilst Key Punch was off selling Miller's other four games, he had already been working on quite a lot of the stuff for the IBM PC and trying to flog it to other publishers, but he wasn't really going anywhere. So he decided to just take the shareware route and stick stuff on bulletin boards. So he took one of his games that he'd been working on called Beyond the Titanic, packaged it up, uploaded to BBS's, and just asked for a $5 or $10 donation. And it didn't do brilliantly. It did okay, but it was, relatively popular. And it was a nice little game. It was imaginative. It put you on the Titanic, where crazy things happened after it sinks in 1912. But it gave Miller an idea. He kind of realized that the shareware thing was a little bit anarchic. The original developers weren't making a lot of money. They weren't getting the fame that they really deserved. So he decided to create a new model, so he set up a new company, which he called Apogee, and he started a new model called the Apogee shareware model. And you'll notice that Beyond the Titanic got re-released later on under the Apogee name. It was the first game released under that title. Now, of course, if you know DOS games from the 1980s, you'll know the name Apogee. One of the first games was released under the Apogee name was Kingdom of Kroz, which was an entry for a Code Quest jam that Miller did in 1987 and then re-released in 1988 under Apogee. Biomenace, Monster Bash, Duke Nukem, Commander Keen, Crystal Caves, eventually ending up with some of their most famous stuff, Wolfenstein. And Wolfenstein, of course, then kick-started ID, which went on to Doom. But if you've never heard of Doom, you've probably heard of their more famous game, Math Rescue. Anyway, back to Beyond the Titanic. So you might remember we were talking a little bit about the early days of MS-DOS. Well, Beyond the Titanic was originally made for DOS 1.0. And you remember that CP/M was the father of MS-DOS 1.0, and including a lot of the file APIs. But in 1983, Microsoft produced DOS 2.0, and they killed off that CP/M file API because they just didn't like it that much, and they replaced it with something else. When they did that, unfortunately, the original Beyond the Titanic wouldn't work anymore. So Miller, when he wanted to re-release it later in 1986 and 1988 under the Apogee title, he had to change the method of file access in order to make the newer version. But they still never managed to quite figure out how to make it save onto hard disks, so it only works on floppies still, even after the rewrite. So when he set up his new company, Miller transferred the ownership of Beyond the Titanic to Apogee, where it retains the rights to this day. But in 1998, they decided to release it as freeware, freely available to everyone. And then in 2009, they re-released it yet again as freeware, but this time including the source code. The main thing to be aware of, though, is probably because Miller's quite attached to it, because it helped get Apogee up and running. He does point out that you're not allowed to do whatever you want with it. You're free to play with it and peruse the source code, but the actual game itself remains his. Alright, so let's have a look at the game itself. You'll remember that I said that it doesn't work with hard disks, so I'm going to have to mount a previously made blank disk. Right, so we have ourselves a completely blank disk, which we will need. So again, remember from yesterday, a lot of IBM PCs had black and white screens, so it asks if you've got a colour screen, say yes, and we'll only say we've got one disk drive. Okay. Here we are at the ship's fore. You're standing near the front of the Titanic on the starboard deck. That's the right-hand side to you and me. To the east, a wooden rail follows the curve of the ship. Okay, so I guess to the east, it follows the curve of the ship. Okay, so I'm guessing that the Titanic was heading west when it hit the iceberg. So I'm guessing that we're on the right-hand side of the ship, the north side. Behind you, to the south, are the sounds of a wild party. A misty breeze parts your hair in an awkward place and carries the message of an icy ocean. I wonder what an icy ocean's message would be. Probably, don't swim in me, you'll get cold. As you gaze at the stars, you discover that the rail serves well as a place to lean on. Okay, let's try it. I don't understand what lean is. Okay, well, we'll head towards the back of the boat. Let's go east. Ship middeck. Standing in the middle of the starboard deck, you can barely view both ends, which lead east and west from here, gently curving inward. In front of you are several lifeboats, each held in place by a thick rope. Oh, might need to use those at some point. Above and behind you is one of the ship's mammoth smokestacks, releasing clouds of white smoke into the night sky. A bright yellow shooting star streaks across the blackness and fades away. That's an omen. Right, let's go to the back. This end of the ship is dimly lit, allowing you to make out new star clusters. A large stack of misplaced cargo blocks your path to the east. Written on one of the crates is a faded message. To the west, you can still see numerous lifeboats hanging but along the side of the Titanic. There's a knife here with its point buried deep in one of the crates. That might come in handy. Kablang! The Titanic lurches sideways as a teeth-grinding sound rips along the side of the ship. You suddenly realize that the ship has struck an iceberg. Even as you think the huge vessel tilts and stutters, sinking lower and lower into the icy black ocean. Crowds of people rush from every exit in a mad panic to escape the danger. Well, I think we're going to have that knife. A couple of the passengers rode past you looking for a boat to climb into. Knife taken. Okay, let's have a look at that. Let's have a look at that message. In ragged writing, the note reads, "Miller was lost here." That must be Scott Miller. A couple of passengers rush past you looking for a boat to climb into. Alright, well I don't know about you, but I think it's time that we headed for the lifeboats. So let's see, where were those lifeboats? Standing in the middle of the starboard deck, you can barely view both ends. In front of you are several lifeboats. Okay, let's see, can I climb into lifeboat? Excellent. You're within one of the many wooden lifeboats along the side of the ship. A single thick rope secures the boat to the Titanic. You can still walk across the steps to the south to get back to the great ship. A small red kit is built into the side of the boat just beside the first bench. Okay, let's have a look at this kit. Survival kit. Okay. Picky. Open the kit. Opened. A banana. Very handy in a tight situation. A flashlight and a rope. Got it past you for a boat to climb into. Well, there's my boat. Can I do that? Nope. Okay. Get rope. Get flashlight. Get. I'm having that banana though. Okay. Now, can I wave to passengers? Say get in. No. Okay. All right. Every man for themselves. Can I lower the... Oops. Lower the lifeboat. Secured with a thick rope. Let's have a look at this rope. Secures the lifeboat to the Titanic. Alright, I think I know what I'm going to do. Cut the rope. Yes! He saw the rope feverishly until twang! It snaps under the weight of the boat. The boat plummets down to the ocean's surface. Impacting with a huge splash. A previously unseen safety harness breaks loose from under a bench. Oh dear. Oh, excellent. Can I get the harness? You're in the wrong dimension to do something like that. A spout of hot steam forms a glowing cloud in the sky as the Titanic disappears, but in the distance you can barely hear the voices of the person who made it safely off the ship. Yeah, I'm in the wrong dimension. Can I get the safety harness? Can I wear the safety harness? Excellent. Right. This must be one of those safety harnesses that can't be picked up somehow. The safety harness is now secured firmly around your waist. In the distance you hear a new sound, a low rumbling, as eerie as the night. Alright, I better start rowing. Row the boat. Oh. With oars spelt in the rock way. The gurgling sound. Can I paddle? Let's search the boat. Is there some oars that I've missed? You're in a wooden lifeboat floating. A survival kit is built inside of the framework. You now sense new ripples in the water rocking your boat slightly. Can I look under my bench? Unless you collect dust. Not helpful. Alright, looks like I'm just going to have to wait. Time passes. Your lifeboat is now rocking violently from waves caused by an unknown force. You can hear a loud gusher sound in front of your boat, which sounds much like a waterfall. Up ahead you see a section of the icy water that appears much darker than the surrounding area. Alright. Time passes. With a great pitch forward, your boat is swallowed by a huge swirling whirlpool. As you enter the spinning vortex, the great centrifugal force presses you against the bench. You finally pass out due to overwhelming pressure. Scott, if you're watching this, I am sorry. I'm very picky when it comes to spelling. And I know that you've mentioned it before, that your spelling wasn't great when you were young. Huge cavern. You are standing in the middle of a huge cavern. From the western wall, a torrent gusher of water builds into a fast-flowing underground stream, which heads to the east. The cave follows the stream to the east, leading to a dark area. At this part of the cavern, the walls appear as smooth as glass. So this part of the cavern, the walls. Can I leave the boat? You can't see any boat. You see a mangle. Okay. How can I see? Do I have to light the lamp? Flashlight? Nothing to burn it with. All right, picky. Okay, that didn't help. The cave follows a stream to the east, leading to a dark area. All right, let's follow that. The Cave of Pins. This cave is full of beautiful rock formations. Long columns of stalactites fill the cave from top to bottom. Oh, there'd be columns then, not stalactites. The stream looks shallow here. It might be possible to wade across to get to the north side. To the west, you can still see the strange light coming from the huge cavern. The stream continues eastward, while a separate cave entrance leads to the southeast. Okay, well, let's go southeast, see what there's. This is a cramped cave with a floor that feels like mud, smells like 2-month-old socks. Gross. On the wall in front of you are some strange chiseled markings. The only way out is to the northeast. Right, I'm going to have to examine those markings. The chisel measurement world. Be wary, traveller, for finer adventures have tried and died. A wall will block thy path unless these words thy have. Nepo egasap. You hear a bat fly overhead. Oh, hang on. That says passage open backwards. Alright, I think we've got a magic word. Open sesame, or passage open. Okie dokie. Right. Which way can I go? Don't know. The only way to... Oh, right. Okay, we go to the northwest. To the west, you can still see something. It continues eastward. Alright, let's follow the stream for a little bit. Stream bend. At this point, the stream makes a bend to the northeast. A slight rumbling sound can be heard further down the stream. The path to the west returns to the stalactite cave. A separate path leads to the southeast. Alright, let's go to the okay, let's go southeast then. Hex Cave. A passage opens up to form another small misty cave. You notice something unusual about the eastern wall. A new passage breaks off to the northeast. To the west, you can still hear the sound of the rushing stream. A small opening in the cave wall heads southwest. All right. Is this the wall we have to say open passage? Been under. All right. Do we have to say it in the way that? Like that? Ah, there you go. After you finish uttering the words, the hexagons within the wall begin to shudder. Seconds later, the entire wall seems to be shaking with the life of its own. The whole cave seems ready to collapse. Before your eyes, the hexagons begin transforming themselves into circles, like the TARDIS, and unable to fit together, they fall to the ground. A minute later, the remainder of the wall falls to the ground, each circle vanishing on impact. Soon, there's nothing left but a new passage. Alright, let's go to the east through the passage. You're at the turning point of a winding tunnel, mysteriously carved out of solid rock. The rays of your flashlight fade into blackness in either direction. The crumbled wall lies back to the west, and the tunnel heads to the northwest. Well, I think you can see this is a fascinating adventure. I think I might just carry on playing this, but we've spent enough time on DOSCember. This is my 6th DOSCember game. It should be my 7th, but we had a power cut here yesterday, so this is the 6th DOSCember game. And this was Beyond the Titanic by Scott Miller, who later went on to head up Apogee, which produced many, many well-loved games. But as far as Apogee is concerned, this is where it all began. Hope you enjoyed that, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.